Recording this on November 22nd of 2014. And you know what, Ramon? I just flat out can't believe this year's almost over already.
Don't tell anybody.
I mean, time has just been flying by. I mean, you know, I work a solid 5 days a week, every week. And it's like I get up on Monday morning and then all of a sudden it's Friday. I don't know. There's something to that time speeding up thing.
It's so funny you bring that up.
It's funny.
Yeah, because one of the news that I'm going to talk about is I was blown away by the article, and it's Jaden and Willow Smith enlightening interview. And in the article, he actually talks about time, and him and his sister talk about time, and how they feel that they can control the way it speeds up and slows down. And it's just completely mind-blowing to hear the things that drop out of these kids' mouth. You know, like, I didn't even, at their age, I had no idea who Oshun was, and it's one of their favorite authors and things like that. And it's an article worth reading, and it's so fresh, a breath of fresh air to hear that generation talk like that.
I mean, got this put in the news section?
Not in the news section. I put it in Facebook, but I will put it in the news section. Which, if you guys go to the webpage, which is www.thehundredthmonkeyradio.com, and just scroll all the way down below Tom's picture, you'll see the news section. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And not only, you know, they're not the only kids talking this way, but they're probably the most famous kids talking this way. So it's amazing to hear, and these are definitely, I know people don't like to put labels, but indigo children or star seeds or whatever you want to call them, these kids.
You know, the kids, Ramon, you know, there's, everybody keeps talking about these crystal children and you know, the indigos and all these different names for these kids, and they're talking like this is something special, that these children are something special for our specific times on the planet, and everything. And I've come across some research, and even my own intuition recently has kind of pointed something out to me that really rings true to me. Is that these kids have always been here. And
I don't think not in the amount that there is.
Ramon, I think the difference now is the internet. Is the way this world has become so much smaller, and that these voices are being able to be heard. And we've got people like you and I and all of the guests and all these other hosts out here that are doing this, actively doing this work, that are seeking these things out and publicizing them. I mean, we're bringing it to light more so than any other time in history. So those anomalies, whatever you want to call these amazing people that are coming up on the planet right now, and like I said, I think this has always happened, but I think now the exposure is so easy to get and so easy to do via the internet. I mean, just look at
Yeah.
us. We're just a couple guys that, said, hey, we want to do something proactive, and we've got a radio show, and we talk to people all over the damn world.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with that, but at the same time, how did you get to that point? It was after, going through hell and coming back. At least for me and you, I don't know about our guest today, but, and the other point is, if I was watching a documentary several weeks ago or several months ago on indigo children, and it was saying, yeah, the labeling is not good, but if we don't give them some kind of label, somebody else will. And, and we call them HD and, HDD and autistic and this and that. And these are very different gifted children. Like, I work with, I would say 2 or 3 that are just mind-blowing. And it's not what they say, it's their energy patterns is so different from the other kids. And
well, granted, I do agree with you that I think because of the explosion of spirituality and consciousness on the planet that, we are seeing more amazing people across the board, and I don't think it's just limited to the children coming in, though.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, but what happened to a lot of them back then, during our time, was they got locked up in, insane asylums and things like
that. Right. Give them some Ritalin.
Even before then, it was give them some shock treatment. But let me just get on to this last news, so before our guest falls asleep. This other news is something that is amazing, but for me it doesn't shock me. It's a spooky alignment of quasars across billions of light years. They're all like lining up, and if you see the pattern, the way patterns in nature are, that's not surprising whatsoever. But I'll read this quick paragraph. A new observation with the ESO's Very Large Telescope, the VLT, in Chile has revealed alignment over the largest structures ever discovered in the universe. And that's a European team over in Chile. But it's just, this really proves to what a lot of people have been talking about. But enough with the news.
Yeah, make sure you put that one up on the webpage too.
Yeah, both of these I mentioned are amazing. I definitely will. But
cool.
Tom, who do we have?
We have Joe Fontinos with us, or Fotinos. I'll make sure that I get that pronunciation right. The Spiritual Businessman. He is Vice President and Publisher at Tarcher Penguin, and the co-author of The Prayer Chest, which Judy Collins called a wonderful and enlightening book. The book was a Family Circle Book of the Month, as well as endorsed by Christiane Northrup, M.D., Julia Cameron, Catherine Ponder, and many others. Fotinos has also written or co-written several other books, including Multiply Your Blessings, A Little Daily Wisdom, and Think and Grow Rich Workbook. His books have over 120,000 copies in print and have been published in 14 languages. Fotinos has been featured in many magazines and newspapers and was given Science of Mind magazine's first Spiritual Hero of the Year award. A licensed minister with the Center for Spiritual Living, Fotinos travels the country giving talks and workshops on spirituality and inspiration. He also speaks once a month and gives ongoing classes at the Center for Spiritual Living in North Jersey. Fotinos has narrated a dozen audiobooks, including the nationally best-selling audio editions for Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and The Law of Success. And he is the male voice for Penguin's classic Poems of the Heart and upcoming Bible Verses by Heart apps. He consults with businesses and individuals with his Soul Compass work to help them create success, fulfillment, and purpose. His new book, My Life Contract, by Hampton Roads, and the Think and Grow Rich Starter Kit by Tarcher Penguin is now out, and I happen to have a copy of My Life Contract right here in my hands. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Joel Fotinos. Am I saying your last name right?
You are. Can you hear me?
We hear you great, and you probably hear that a lot, don't you?
Yes.
Are we saying your last name right?
Well, most people don't even ask. They say it wrong, and then they don't even ask, so I appreciate it. You said it perfectly.
Oh, fantastic. So Joel, we'd like to get a little bit of background on our guests and find out actually where they come from. I know we found that a lot of us have some event in our lives that turn us towards the spiritual seeking path and trying this self-help path. Was there something specific within your life that turned you that direction?
Well, I was always a very spiritual and religious kid. So I grew up in western Nebraska, where there's not a lot of spiritual or religious diversity. There's Protestant and Catholic. That's about as diverse as they got there. And I was the kid that went to the library a lot, and I would check out books on by Rumi and different thinkers, and to the point where the librarian called my mom and said, "Do you know what your kid is reading?" And so I was always very small town, yeah. And they just didn't, there's not a lot of tolerance for difference there. But so I was always a very spiritual and religious kid. And but interestingly enough, I think what really awoke me, even though I was a youth pastor when I was in high school and had a Bible study, and that's back when I really identified with the Christian faith. But what really awoke me, strangely, was the thing that looked like the opposite of religion or spirituality, which was my finances. Back when I was in my 20s, I found myself in severe credit card debt, and I think a lot of listeners can probably identify with that. And they just kept sending these credit cards in the mail, and I kept using them. And at a certain point, I had amassed 23 active credit cards, and I had nearly $60,000 worth of personal credit card debt. Wow. And my life just started closing around me. It got very dark, very heavy. I felt, it felt very oppressive. Debt feels very difficult. I felt shame and guilt and all of those things. It was my journey from going from heavy debt to going to zero debt that really was my spiritual awakening. And who would have known that it was, the topic of money that would have led me into that kind of greater story of life. But that's how it unfolded for me. And that process of going from heavy debt to debt-free really opened me, awakened me, caused me to go in and do shadow work and forgiveness work and just all of those things. And so that's the long answer to your question. That's really, I think, is spiritually well read as I was. There's a difference between knowing something and living it, and it took the process of getting out of debt for me to actually live these beliefs and ideals.
It's a part of becoming. It's when it becomes part of who we are, I think.
Yeah.
And the process of getting there, we can intellectually know this stuff all day long and never put it into practice within our lives. And it took the proverbial 2x4 upside my head to actually start embodying these principles and these philosophies. Before the wake-up call, right? When we know all these things and we don't put them into practice, and we go to church every week and do our Hail Marys or whatever the heck it is, and walk out of the church and go right about doing our normal business without using any of those things that we quote unquote learned. Yeah.
Do you feel, Joe, that because it sounds like, at least from all the people we come across, that I would say like maybe 95 to 99% of our guests had to go through some kind of calcination or tempering, to use the analogy, in order to get further along. Do you feel that that's something that most humans have to go through, or?
I do. I think that there's like an initiation that happens where we are, Jesus said the words about being in the world but not of it. And those are beautiful words that you can put on a bumper sticker, but the difference between the journey from being in the world to not of it is a journey of initiation where everything that does not belong gets melted away or burned away or taken away or somehow moved away from you so that you can move at a different level of life. And it's like we can't hold on to the lesser and the greater at the same time. So I think that we tend to need what Tom said, that proverbial 2x4, to wake us up to the fact that if we want to be awake in the world, we have to go through the process of letting go of things. And for most humans, I think it's a very painful process. And then we look back and we say, maybe we made it more painful than it needed to be.
Oh, that hindsight 2020 thing, right?
It is.
Yeah.
But if we can learn that, that in hindsight we made it harder than it probably needed to be, maybe we can use that as foresight for the things that continue to happen to us.
And do the things that you're doing right now, which is sharing this information with others, saying this is the obstacles that I overcame, and here's how I did it.
And guess what? You can do it too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I try to, I'm a simple person, and I'm not a simpleton, by the way, but I'm a simple person, and I kept reading these books back when I was in debt that were 400 or 500 pages long, and they had 17 principles, and everything was so complicated. And I thought, I just tell me what to do, and I'll do it. And so what I tried to do in the book, My Life Contract, is I tried to make it as simple as for the readers as I made it for myself, because what I learned for me is when something was simple, meaning graspable, where I could understand it and do it, I would do it, and I would be more apt to stick with it. But when something is complicated and so many steps and all of that, I would start out really enthusiastic, but then I would lose focus and attention really quickly, and then I'd feel like a failure again. So, I tried to find a system for myself that set me up to move forward in a positive way, and now I get to help others do the same thing. And it's amazing. The thing that I thought was the worst thing that had happened to me, all of that personal credit card debt, ended up being something that has not only awakened me and blessed my life, but allowed me to go around and help other people. So
right.
I think, that's a good thing to remember, is what feels like the hardest thing in the world can actually end up being the greatest blessing that you have.
I have heard that so many times, and I feel that same thing for myself, that my 2x4 was pretty traumatic, and it's one thing in my life that I would not change for anything. I mean, it gave me so much and taught me so much that I'm very grateful for it at this point. But during the process, I was like, oh God, why?
Someone shoot me, please. There was one lesson I had learned during Minds, and Minds was like in different stages, but I came to one point where I went on vacation. I had this pretty cushy job, and I went on vacation, and I spent all this money in Miami, and I was trying to hang out with the big wigs and stuff like that. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I'll just save money again, and I was laid off, and I was just completely stressed out because, again, the bills started piling up. And to make a long story short, I sat there several weeks later, and I didn't have any money, no food in the fridge, and this bird comes to the window, and there's a screen there, and tell the bird, please tell me you got some good news, because I really need some good news. And, you know, the bird flew away. He chirped a couple times and flew away. And I went downstairs to the mailbox, and there was a check there from unemployment of, I forgot, was it several weeks or a month's worth that they hadn't sent me, that was backed up. And I was like, thank you, I can pay my rent and pay the phone bill. And I learned that day that stressing out has no meaning. It has no value, stressing out for your issues that you have. So yeah, it was a great experience, and I understand exactly what you mean.
So
go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to go off into the title of your book, My Life Contract. When that came across the computer, when Nikki sent you to us, that title struck me on several different levels. I mean, the first impression I had is, you know, there's a lot of talk out in the spiritual world of us having some form of a contract here on the planet, some specific thing that we are supposed to be doing here. And that was the first thing that struck me when I read that title. And when I looked into it deeper, I'm very intrigued with this process, by the way, but because I have many issues with it. I guess I want to get your input on predestination. On, you know, is there something in this experience that we have here that is predestined and that says this is your life contract?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I personally would use the word predestined, but I do think that, and maybe that's just splitting hairs. I do think that we come into the world with a purpose. So if that's predestined, then maybe that's the same thing. But I feel like we each come in with a purpose, and that purpose, you know, we each have a unique purpose, and I when I talk about my life contract, I do mean contract in the way that you're talking about, a contract that might have been agreed upon before we even came into the world. I don't get into it that heavy in the book, mostly because I wanted to keep it very simple, because a lot of my audience I speak to entrepreneurs and realtors and car salesmen and you know, all different kinds of people. So I didn't want to get into a lot of different ideas in this particular book, but I do believe that there is this contract that we have on this planet. And the way that I meant it, though, in the book, the way that I shifted the word contract for the book is that when we come to this earth, the things that bring us joy are the things that I feel like we need to keep moving towards. Our goals in life should be the things that bring us joy. So when we choose those things, when we say, yes, this thing is the thing that I want, and that could be a tangible thing, like for me at the beginning, it was money, but it also can be qualities like more peace or more joy. Whenever we choose those things as a goal, we enter into what I call a contract with life, capital L, life. And I think I frame it that way just because I'm also, you know, by day I'm a corporate businessman, and I deal with contracts every single day. And I see that in contracts, each party has certain responsibilities. And I do believe that that's true about our lives, that here on earth, life will do its part of the contract that we make with it, as long as we do our part of the contract as well. And so that's where I go in the book, and I try to make it very simple. Here's our part of the contract. Here's life's part of the contract. When we do our part, life does its part, and the contract becomes fulfilled. And so when we do that, spiritually speaking, what I know is we are fulfilling that larger life contract that we entered into the world with.
Very nice. You know, one issue, you know, I actually experience myself, and I know many of our listeners and many of the people on the planet are deal with is actually figuring out what our goals are. And you know, I see something like this, a workbook form, the format that you put this book in is fantastic, because I see it as something that can assist people in trying to figure out exactly what it is they want. There's so many people that don't even have the foggiest idea what they want. Now, how is it that we come to a place where we really understand what it is we want?
Well, there are several processes in the book that help people to come to that realization for themselves. But I would say, you know, for me, the people that tend to come to my workshops or classes or talks, they are people who either say, I have no idea what I should do next, what my goal should be, or they say, the other 50% say, I have so many things I want to do, I don't know how to narrow it down. And the result for both of those kind of ends of the spectrum, I don't know what to do, or I don't know which one to pick, tends to be the same thing, which is, since they don't know what they want to do or which one to pick, they end up not making any choice or any decision, which means they stay stuck. And they know what that feels like. Being stuck feels awful. You know, you feel like you're not doing the right thing, or that you should be doing something else, or you feel like you're missing out on something. So one of my goals in life is to help people get unstuck by choosing something. And so for the people who say, I have no idea what it is I want to do, well, I have no idea what goal I should choose, I have some processes in the book to help them. And one of the things I do to help them is to take off the pressure of trying to feel like they have to pick the right thing or they've made a mistake. You know, a lot of people get very paralyzed by that idea of, well, if I choose something and it's not the right thing, then I've made a mistake. I have to wait until I find that perfect thing. And I take away the myth of perfection and say, well, instead of trying to find that perfect thing that is a goal, let's just choose something a little better than what you have now in whatever area you want to work on. If it's health, what's a little better area than where you're at now? What's a good next goal? And that takes a lot of the pressure off of people, because, you know, it's a head trip to say, hey, I've got to find that one perfect thing, and if I don't find it, I'm screwed. So it's very helpful for people to do that.
Right, you know, one little step at a time. And I like the 90-day format, because that actually gives an evolution of that choosing process.
Yeah. Well, I do everything in 90-day segments, because for me, I did it originally because I thought when people would say, well, you have to do something for the rest of your life, or you have to do something for a year, that would feel overwhelming. And I would think, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And immediately I'd want to do the opposite. But when I realized I could do something for 90 days, it's just 3 months. I could commit to 3 months. And so that's how I started doing 90-day segments. But what has happened is, what I've realized is doing everything in 90-day segments allows me to stay very current in my life. And at the end of 90 days, I have to stop and say, now what do I want? And it causes me not to get very complacent and to, stagnate, because I know every 3 months, and during the process I can make changes as well, of course, but, you know, every 90 days I stop and take stock again of life and say, wow, okay, am I moving in the right direction? Is this what I want? Do I still want this? What's working? What's not working? And I can make some course corrections along the way.
So, you know, 90 days for some people would be daunting. You know, especially holding, doing a process for 90 days. What do they say? It takes 21 days to form a habit, something like that.
Right.
Right. I suppose I'm just as guilty as anybody else out there for that sticking with things. You put on the cover of your book, staying on track.
Yeah.
What kind of advice have you added in the book for staying on track?
Well, that's where that simple thing comes in, because when if I try to do something for 90 days that's complicated, I'm not going to do it. I just personally am not going to do it. And I was working with this guy on health not too long ago, and he said, here's what I want you to do every day. And it was, I don't even remember. It was such a long, crazy list of things. And I said, I'm not going to do this. I won't even remember to do all of it. So if it's too complicated, even just 90 days, people will get discouraged and stop doing it. So what I try to do is make it really simple and make it really accessible. So the staying on track part, 90 days is a long time, and yet, presumably, unless something happens, we're all going to live for the next 90 days, so we might as well be conscious about the next 90 days. And the process that I put in the book is very simple. At the beginning of each day, just at the start of each day, spend 5 minutes. And you spend 5 minutes thinking about the thing that it is that you want. And as you think about it, you ask the question, what should I do toward this thing that I want today? And you just write down whatever comes to you. 5 minutes, that's it. And at the end of the day, you spend another 5 minutes and you say, how did it go? And you write down what your results were. Maybe you write down, this was hard for me and I don't know why, or I was great, I exceeded my expectations, or I had a great aha moment or something. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. And that makes it so much easier to stay with 90-day program versus when people say, well, you should take an hour every morning for a spiritual practice. You should meditate for 30 minutes, and then you should do this. Those are all great things. And by the way, those are things that I've built up to in my life. But if you can just start with 5 minutes at the highest, the whole altitude of your day is completely different than when you begin your day thinking about your problems or turning on the news and seeing the scary things happening in the world. You begin at the highest, and then you just end up having a completely different day. That creates a great forward momentum that helps to keep on track for the 90 days.
So about these goals that we set, would you say that there are any that are too ambitious or too aggressive? Or I know you put the keep it simple thing in there, but what if we have these lofty goals? These really what from the outside looking in may look like unattainable goals.
Right.
What about those? How do we deal with those within this process?
Well, that's another reason why 90 days is good, is because you break those big goals into smaller goals that you can achieve. And once you get a forward momentum, you can take great leaps. But when you start with a realistic thing. So when I began creating this process for myself all those years ago, and I was in debt, of course, the bigger goal for me was I would love to be a millionaire and financially free. I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't like to be financially free in their life. And so I thought I'd love to have millions of dollars or whatever. But that goal was too big of a goal for me to start with. So what I did is I started with a goal of just getting to zero. If I could just get to zero, that was a number I could conceptualize. It was a number I could relate to. And it took me 3.5 years to get to zero, although the accountant that I first went to said it was going to take me 23.5 years.
Wow.
So in the process, when he said 23.5 years, that was the day that I knew something had to change. And so in the process of becoming so engaged in my own life and working this very simple process every single day, it just took 3.5 years. And it's because as I started enlarging my understanding and my awakening, then my life enlarged as well. And my circumstances changed in ways that I could never have foreseen. And it's that contract with life. As I was doing my part of the contract, life was just taking care of so much of it. But I will say this, if we begin with a goal that's way too big at the start, I find that many times that is a form of self-sabotage. So for instance, I was teaching a class a few years ago, and we were creating goals, and the guy said his goal was $1 billion, with a B, $billion. And I said, well, maybe you can start with a smaller goal. And he said, no, $1 billion is what I want, or nothing. And I said, so what is your job now? And he said, well, I don't have a job. And I said, well, what do you do for rent? And he said, well, I sleep on a friend's couch. And I said, okay, well, what do you like to do in life? He said, well, I'm an opera singer and I like to sculpt, but I don't want to make money from those things because then it'll commercialize the things that I love. And I said, okay, well, why don't you start, instead of at $1 billion, why don't you start at like $10,000? He said, no, $1 billion or nothing. Well, he dropped out of the class after about 4 or 5 weeks. It was a 14-week class. And last I heard, he was still living on people's couches. And that was a way of sabotaging, setting a goal so high that, there was a part of him that said, see, I told you this stuff doesn't work. And it couldn't work because he just chose something that he couldn't even embody. I'm not saying it's impossible. Everything's possible, but it's not probable that we can take those big of leaps, at least at first. Maybe there are people for whom they are the exception, but for me, I needed to go from nearly $60,000 in debt to zero, and then from zero, I went to, money in the bank, and then from there, I went to this, to that, and eventually, moving beyond tangible things into deeper spiritual qualities as well.
Right. Well, it's seeing the castle on the hill and not realizing you have to walk down the path to get there.
That's right.
How much of the idea that money is the root of all evil really helps to self-sabotage ourselves? Because I think even for myself that's a hard one to kind of get over, because a lot of us grew up that only certain types of people had lots of money,
Yeah.
And it usually the painted picture, nice people don't have money, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot of people that have shown up in my classes for whom that is one of their big issues with money. Money's the root of all evil, or they'll say, the love of money is the root of all evil. In which case I say, in a sense, it's true. If you make it your evil, then it will be your evil. One thing that helped me was the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which I'm a real proponent of. I read it over and over again as I was going through this process. And what I realized when I read that book one time, I had an aha moment. And the aha moment was that of the people he writes about in the book that become very wealthy, almost none of them made wealth their goal. It was their passions. It was their reason for being. It was that great French word, the métier that they have, which is the thing that they are so good at. And in the process of doing that thing, they become wealthy. And money is just another form of energy on this planet. And on this planet, wealth actually has an exchange. So it's, in my experience or my opinion, I would rather have it than not have it. I've been in both camps, being poor and being rich. And being rich for me felt better because not only did I feel freer, but I now had more resources that I could turn around and help other people and lift other people up. And in my example, I could help other people, find their way of doing it as well.
Yeah. So what would you recommend for a person who has that mindset? What would be the first thing to free themselves from that mindset? So every morning for 5 minutes, what would they think about? What would you
Well,
recommend?
I would say the book, this particular book, My Life Contract, is about goal setting. But if somebody really wanted to get to the other side of that opinion about money, that money is the root of all evil, what I would have them do is I would start keeping a journal, and I would probably spend some time every day. And I actually have done this in my life. During that time when I went from debt to debt free, I spent a lot of time thinking about my beliefs about money. And so I would take a journal, and I would tell people to put at the top, money is the root of, and let them freeform it. Evil, money, people with money are selfish, greedy, all the things that the opinions they might have, and to continue to just allow themselves to evolve that and in their journals. So then say, if I had a different opinion about money, it might be such and such. My parents' opinion about money was or were, and answer that question. Oftentimes, we end up having the same thought about money that our parents had. And when we realize that a lot of the programming we have about money is pre-programmed into us in our childhood, just by observing the way that the people around us felt about money, it helps us to free ourselves and say, oh, okay, so my thoughts about money aren't really my thoughts about money at all. They're really my parents' thoughts about money that I adopted as my own. So what do I want to think about money now? If my parents thought money was the root of all evil, and I'm recognizing that I just adopted that thought because not from any analysis, but just that was their thought, maybe I should do some analysis. Maybe I should think about this further. What do I want to think about money? And begin that, that process of kind of changing and becoming conscious. So much of what we do in our life is through this kind of unconscious programming. And, my work, and certainly the work that you guys are doing, the wonderful things that you guys are doing on your program, is to help people awaken from the pre-programming so that people can choose their own conscious thoughts and get more information and get educated about things and to feel and to do whatever it takes so that we're not in any way in the matrix. We're wide and awake so that we have our own new thoughts about things.
Well said. Well said. This whole work that you're putting out here is it's manifestation 101. That's one of the big words out there in the woo-woo world is manifesting. How do you manifest your bliss? How do you manifest things into your life? And we are creators. Everything that we do, say, speak, think is a creative process. What I'm seeing here is this is a really good way for somebody to take and maybe start gaining some control over that creative process within their own lives and taming the beast, so to say, because so many of us we go through this world and we are, being the creators 100% of the time, not just when we're actively and consciously trying to create. Everything we do is a creative process. This looks like an amazing tool for us to learn a little bit more about that whole creative process within ourselves and how energetically what we're putting out into the world will come back. I'm gonna assume that you're gonna agree with what I just said there, but there's something within that creative process that I have found to be true within my own life, and it has to do with just my simple words and how I sabotage my own creative process with the words that I speak, the thoughts that I think. The things that I do that are contrary to what I am, what my goal of manifestation is. And what have you, what have you learned and seen in your own experience about just the words that we speak and the thoughts that we think in how they either take away from or add to what our goals are?
It's so true. It's exactly, the words that we think, the words that we say, the words that we live by often are so damaging and so cruel to ourselves. We are our own worst enemies in that sense. We can say the meanest things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being about ourselves, and or we find ways that just continue to cripple us and keep us living small little lives. And I don't mean small in a capitalistic sense. I mean small in a spiritual sense. And when we begin that process of awakening, what happens is we begin to become aware of those very words and the way that the words affect our lives. And one of the cornerstones of my philosophy is something I call C and P, the letter C, the letter P. C means consistent and P means persistent. So that means that when we begin making a change, when we make a decision to move forward and make a change, we start becoming aware of those thoughts and words that we have in our mind, and we must be consistent every single day trying to make that effort. And it is a process. It's not an overnight thing. It is a process to begin changing those words. And P, so consistent means every single day. Persistent means especially those days when it's really the hardest or that we don't want to do it. So we'll come up with, we'll start.
Uh-oh. Joel, if you can still hear me, you just dropped out. Ramon, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Whatever.
Oh,
and
Joel, we just lost you for about 10 seconds there.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. We lost you right at the tail end of the persistence explanation.
Yeah, so something will happen in our lives, an experience, an event, like we get dumped or we get fired, and our old thoughts, those old words will come right back and will re-trigger us. So those are the times when we need to be most vigilant in reframing and reprogramming our minds with more positive words. And the other thing I would say from what you were saying, which is so true, is we are amazing at keeping ourselves so small and in the kind of the conscious awakening world, the spiritual world, where so many of us should be feeling our own power and experiencing our own power. Often we are the people that read the books, that go hear the speakers. We can tell everybody else how to live their lives perfectly, but our own lives we're either in debt or we're unhealthy or we're in certain kinds of relationships. We need to find a way or simple ways to move from head knowledge, book knowledge, into life knowledge, where we're actually living the principles. And that's why the book that I wrote is mostly a workbook, so that it's not that thing where people just read and say, yes, that's so great, but they actually are applying it to their lives and letting their lives change. And that's when I get really excited, is when people start that process where they start applying these positive principles to their life every single day, and they start seeing the changes, and they're like, whoa, I didn't even know I could do this. I didn't even know that, what took me so long? Why did I wait so long for this process of awakening to happen?
Yeah, very true. Very true. Ramon, I hear you out there. What do you got?
Yeah, it's just the way you're putting everything together. It's quite amazing the way you're putting everything together, and for a lot of us, it's like we have a job, which is like, what's the acronym? Just over broke.
I've never heard that.
No?
I had
No,
neither.
that's great.
Wow.
That's
No?
great. Just
Okay.
over broke.
That might be just a New York thing. But, living paycheck to paycheck is what a lot of people use. And, I've seen where my life has gotten better, but as far as the financial area there's always that things that get stuck. Like, as far as reach, I think for a lot of us in this field, it's easy to reach certain types of goals, but other types, like for example, I wanted to start a radio show, and that came together really fast with Tom, and I wanted to write a book and got it done, and it's published and it's out there. But yet I have to go to this 9 to 5, which many of us don't, not saying I don't enjoy my job, but I would like to be doing this 100%.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of us in this field and a lot of people listening to the show, that's where we're kind of stuck. We're doing what we want to do. We're just not living off of it.
Yeah. Well, one of the I did a blog post recently that was titled, "Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it." Those of us, who we're smart people and we're good at what we do, but oftentimes we take that good thing that we can do and we apply it to things that we don't love to do. And that then becomes the cage with an open door that keeps us. So I hear all the time from artists, for instance. A lot of artists come to my workshops and they say, look, I'm really good at my job as an accountant or as a car salesman or whatever, but what I really want to be doing is painting. But painting isn't paying the bills, so I'm going to keep doing this other thing. And I say, I'm the first person to say, don't quit your job if you don't have, resources to meet your responsibilities. But what you can do is you can begin to take the energy that you put, all the energy you put in the job, and take some of it and start applying it toward the other thing consistently, persistently. And as you do that, more and more energy is going to go toward this new thing, this thing that you really want to do. And eventually what will happen is there will be a natural transfer of power, is the way I think of it. And it will happen at the right moment. And it'll happen in a way that will surprise people, because we are one of the ways that we trip ourselves up is we think, if I don't see how it's going to happen, then it probably won't. But what's so great about life is always surprising us about how things happen. Life is, like I said, the accountant said 23 and a half years it was going to take in a best case scenario. And when he told me that news, that it was 23 and a half years to pay off my credit card bills, he said it with such gusto and a smile, because he thought he had figured out the best thing in the world for me. And to me, that sounded like the worst thing. And I thought, I'll just have to stay stuck to this job that I have forever. But when I became engaged and started putting my energy towards the things that I loved, it took 3.5 years, and I ended up in a whole different situation. My life went 180 degrees, but it took consistency and persistency to do it. And we can fall back on the idea that where we're at is good enough. It pays the bills, so I might as well do it. Or we can say, you know what I'm doing now is just a bridge job, so I got to put my energy getting over the bridge. I don't want to live on this bridge forever. I want to get to the other side. And this bridge job is holding me together till I get to the other side, but I got to get to the other side and put all your energy that you can into getting to the other side, into doing the thing that it is that we want. It's not an airy-fairy thing. One of the things I like to do is not make things magical. Like, if I just believe it, it'll come. We have to spend time every day toward it. consistency, persistency. And as we do that, each of those small steps that we take every day will grow exponentially into that new life. I've just seen it now hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times. I don't even know. I've been teaching this for so many years, and I see how it happens. It's so absolutely true.
As Amit Goswami says, doobie doobie doo.
That's right.
Yep.
Exactly. Doobie doobie doo. That's the formula.
Yeah. Okay. So we're reaching the top of the hour, Joel. And where can people pick up your book at? And I don't have a website on here for you.
Oh, well, the website is joelfotinos.com, JoelFotinos.com. And they can pick up the book if they go to the website. There's links, or they can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or their local independent bookstore. And if they don't have it, they can order it.